Welcome to Forbidden Planet TV, and welcome to the second half of my epic conversation with the almighty, supremely talented and very amusing author Ben Aaronovitch, celebrating 10 years of his Rivers of London series. As we get back into the second half of this conversation, Ben and I are engrossed in a side conversation, a tangent, if you will, about the great ITC adventure shows of the 60s. Enjoy. There's a couple of things that appear regularly to a massive degree in all ITC shows. One is the country roads around Pinewood Studios, which you don't really know unless you've ever been there. But yeah, right on. Yeah, absolutely right. Those country roads feature all the time. And then the little home counties, villages around Pinewood appear all the time. They appear to be in like 2/3 of the Department S
often
episodes.
With zombies.
Yes, yeah. Even UFOs. Well, I mean, of course, in UFO really doubled down. They even set the thing in a movie studio. So
yes, well, that was really clever because then I mean, and also, you know, quite a sensible strategy, I thought. But that was very clever. But yeah, I mean, when he's getting strafed by a UFO in a Rolls Royce, that's him on a country road near Pinewood.
Yeah,
I've driven down those roads.
Yeah,
I know what they're like.
Yeah,
but then again, the SAS, you know, assaulted the back of that building. In Who Dares Wins, you know, it's like, and I think in the first X-Men the first reboot of the X-Men movies, X-Men First Class, the Russia, the scene set in Russia with the pine forest in Russia, that was just behind Pinewood as well. Pinewood gets a lot of.
It does. And not only that, but
in L Street, I can never keep up with who.
They're all kind of in the same wheelhouse, aren't they? But for sure, I think the interesting thing is, I've never, I've never been involved in any TV production, but I've had call to go to Pinewood in the course of my job every now and again. And of course, the first time you go, you're at the main building. You're like, oh wow, this is the hospital in every Carry On movie. Suddenly you realise how cheaply made the Carry On movies are, because every scene in a Carry On movie is somewhere in a building at Pinewood Studios.
Well, I mean, it was all right then, because it's a very 60s thing. And now they've built like essentially another Pinewood across the road.
Yeah,
cope with all the all the films all the American films that
all the Marvel production and all that kind of stuff.
Ridiculous amounts of Marvel production.
Yeah, I mean, it's going into super overdrive now. So you were talking about Loki before. Do you think we've sort of hit peak Marvel now? Is it getting to the point where?
No, because you keep saying we've hit peak Marvel, and then there's another peak. I mean, we say that, but if you look at film production, right?
Yeah.
We only get 5 or 6 superhero movies a year.
Yeah.
Right, and we used to get like 30 to 40 westerns a year.
Yes, I agree.
The difference is that now Marvel they expect these superhero movies to be tentpole movies, which means they're much more publicized and but actually in terms of genre over penetration, genre blanketing, it's if you think of the number, if you look back at 1964 and saw how many crime films were released that year,
yes,
how many detective films, how many westerns, how many, you'd find that actually much more would be there's probably more family dramas released each year, at least 8 or 9 times more family dramas released than Marvel movies. It's just that we don't notice them because the Marvel movies make such a lot of not the superhero movies.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I'm not a great fan of superheroes, it has to be said, right? I watch them because they're the closest thing to science fiction I'm going to get.
Yeah.
Right? And because there seems to be 2 types of science fiction movies at the moment. There seems to be post-apocalyptic movies or very depressing slow movies by people with very slow cameras. And I'm just like, something else, something is in between.
Ben, do you have a science fiction movie inside you? Have you got something that?
I have a science fiction book inside me. It will never be made into a movie because it's too silly.
Yeah.
So but I have a science fiction book. I have a fantasy book. I have a science fiction book and a fantasy book that occasionally rear their head up and go, "Oh, what have you written?" And I go, "Shut up."
Do you think you'll get to do them at some point?
Oh, I mean, eventually, just I keep writing like little bits of them in my spare time. So spare time. And so sooner or later there'll be enough. They'll reach a kind of critical mass. I mean, it's not that nobody wants to publish them. It's just that I don't have time to write.
You need the time to do it.
I need to, because there's an expectation if you're a professional writer, especially once you've been around the block, that your books are going to be of a certain quality. So you can't just kind of like knock something out like you can like the first time and go, "Oh, I love my book," and they go, "No," and you go, "You write another one." It's like you're expected to, because they will publish it. That's almost the curse. They will, however bad it is. Yeah. I could probably get the first one published.
Yeah.
Right? They will, because I'm now a name. I'm a name, right? So they will publish the first book, which means if it's horrible, everyone will read it and know it's horrible. So you have to kind of like, you have to write it to a certain quality. So you can, the kind of happy sort of fun days that I used to have. No, you've got to write.
No, you're cursed by your own success.
Yeah, you get cursed. You have to write to a certain quality, and there are certain expectations, and your publisher will expect it to sell a certain amount.
Yeah,
even if it's not, even if it's completely different in genre and characteristics from the book, they will expect it to sell a certain amount. Yeah. And that's not always certain. Look at Galbraith, right?
Yeah.
Nobody read the Galbraith books until they knew it was J.K. Rowling.
Right on.
Right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Enough of a splash. And that's because I think they're perfectly fine murder mysteries, that anyone would be pleased to have. But there's nothing extraordinary about them in the same way that there was about, say, Harry Potter. Yeah,
I think you're right.
So if you go in, so the next thing you have to do is I've got to be really extraordinary or really competent, right? You can't, and I don't think my space opera is particularly extraordinary. It's like I'm a very I've become an old-fashioned science fiction writer. I'm writing very old-fashioned science fiction with kind of like spaceships and ray guns and space opera-y things, where everyone's writing kind of like super bleeding edge.
But the genre needs more of that. The genre needs more old school. There's so much of the other stuff. Biopunk. Yeah, man. There's so
and
much
I don't like biopunk because I'm like old-fashioned. There's like icky biological things best left. I don't want to talk about it. It's like sex. No. So
you're mentioning quality of output and what's expected and maintaining that. What's your process with Andrew when you're creating the comic scripts? How does that actually work?
Well, what happens is we tried writing it together and that didn't work because he's much faster than I. He writes in like massive, big chunks, right, at speed, and I write very slowly in little chunks. And so this is not a compatible kind of like collaborative kind of system. So what we decided is one of us would be lead writer and the other one would effectively be contributor and script editor.
Yeah.
So when I'm writing, he script edits me, and when he's writing lead, I script edit him. But we say, "Oh, I've got this great idea for a scene," and then we will put it in. But one of us is sort of responsible for the whole thing, and that just makes it much easier.
And do you portion that out? Per narrative, per series, or per issue?
Who's got time and who's got an idea?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So if you have you'll notice you have basically two, because you can tell which one of us is the lead writer because it says Andrew Cartmel and Ben Aaronovitch if it's Andrew, and it says Ben Aaronovitch and Andrew Cartmel if it's Ben Aaronovitch, right? Wow. And we both make a significant contribution to the story. But it really is the question of who's enthusiastic for the idea, right? Who's like, I want to do this really badly. Because sometimes we come up with ideas together, sometimes we come up with ideas separately. And we, who's enthusiastic for the idea and what can we do? Who wants to do it? So Cry Fox, Andrew was very keen on that one. So he's the lead writer on that one. Detective Stories was me going, I want to do something with Detective Stories. And he said, okay, that's fine. Now I wanted to do that one. So I was the lead writer on that one. Night Witch, it was slightly more evenly split on Night Witch. I've forgotten the other names of the bloody things. God, Fair and the Furious was mostly mine because I wanted to do I want to do action. Let's do cerebral stuff. I want to do action. So cars. And
that is such a wonderful title. I love the title of that book.
Yes, it's a good title. I wish I could take credit for that title.
Was that Andrew's idea?
Well, it was a simultaneous
Yeah.
James Swallow and Andrew Cartmel. So
yeah, it's a great stuff, but at very end, that is a very, very entertaining story, I think.
Well, it was, it's just, and but also you get into it, and it was like a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to go to Fairyland, and the comics you have to be bolder.
Yeah.
So I do things in the comics I wouldn't necessarily do in the books because they're big, bold visual ideas, right?
Ben, can you give me an example of?
Well, yeah, I wouldn't have gone to Fairyland. I don't think I'd have gone to Fairyland in the way that I did in the books that I went in the comics, because Fairyland, a lot of the atmosphere is very visual, and so therefore it's very strange, all that kind of Mobius style artwork and everything that we went for. That works much better in a comic than it does in a book.
Yeah.
Right. That works much better.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas in the book, I think people expect things to be much more kind of physically grounded. So I can be more playful in the comics. We can be more playful in the comics. We can have like jokey titles. Like I've got a pitch for a story which we haven't got, we haven't got to go ahead yet. They may not like it. I might not go for it. Called Big Trouble in Little Chalfont.
Oh, Matt, they've got to. I mean, those people at Titan, whoever they may be, they've got to do that.
On the fact that I came up with that title. That's got nothing. No, I haven't. I've only just started to work out what actually happens in that story, but that's just a good title. And you can see it now. We'll do pastiche covers in the style.
I'm totally sold on that right now. I think it's inspired.
I'm not going to say comic is lighter weight, but comic is much more something that operates on the surface of things because it's a visual media. Now, and it's not to say it doesn't have depth, but it works very well on the surface in a way that books don't. So I like that. I embrace that because if I wanted to do kind of long-winded, boring dialogue passages, I can stick those in the book.
There's an immediacy with comics, right, where you see the visual.
You have that immediacy. You can chop backwards and forwards in time. You can stick very startling visual images up. The best example is Nightwitch, right? Which is there's a joke in that I just couldn't have done in the books, and it was such a good joke I had to do it, right? And that's the one where the gangsters go around to put the frighteners on Beverly, and you see Peter gets a phone call and he goes, "Hi, he goes, have you done something to annoy the Russian mafia?" And he goes, "No, why did you ask?" And you cut back, right, and they're cleaning her house.
Yeah.
Right? You just can't. It just wouldn't work. It would work in film and possibly, right, but it wouldn't work in. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't work in. Just wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work in prose. And so therefore, you can do that in the comic. You can do the things like the art shift, like also again from which is the crumb. Well, suddenly we're doing crumb style 1970.
Yes, right on.
And Lee was particularly good at that. He's done a pastiche.
That was wonderful.
School. He's done a pastiche of Down with School for us. So for one of the gag strips. And this is a lot of fun. This is tremendous amounts of fun, especially because you don't have to do any of the hard work, right? Lee or the art, and Lee has to do the hard work of actually coming up with these images. You just go, "Oh yes, Down with School. Let's have it like a bit like Goldsworth."
Yeah, no, I really get that, and that's the beauty. That is absolutely the beauty of comics, and just the amount of glorious shorthand that you can have. I don't know if you're familiar with this. There is a very there's a well-known Hawkeye comic that's written by a guy called Matt Fraction, illustrated by a guy called David Aja, and basically the whole concept of it's what Hawkeye is doing when he's not in the Avengers. Yeah, so it's him just living his life in a Manhattan brownstone and helping out the tenants and whatnot. And there's a whole issue. He has a dog that he's found on the streets that becomes his dog, and there's a whole issue that is told from the dog's perspective. Yeah, so the human word balloons, the only thing he's recognizing is his own name or other people's names. The rest of it is just, kind of Woodstock from Peanuts, kind of like dashes and whatnot. And you just go through the whole book from the dog's perspective. Now that's a comics thing, right? You can only do that.
That's a comics thing. We have a thing a bit like that in issue 4 of Monday. See, so we have a thing like that where I tried very hard to do a whole issue where there's no dialogue.
Yeah.
Right, where it's all because it's Foxglove and Abigail and somebody else who doesn't talk very much, and it's basically I tried to do almost all of it with no dialogue from the main character and no like boxes telling you what you do, but I couldn't because it just makes it so much. The process becomes so much longer because you have to visually tell every single plot point, and you can't always do. Sometimes you just don't have enough panels left to get to the end of the story, so occasionally Abigail has to say something like, "Oh well, we have to do this," but I would have liked, I think with a bit more planning, maybe I could have got it. I don't know, it's hard to say. It was my first attempt to do something entirely visual that had no dialogue, because we rely quite heavily in the comics on the kind of like Peter's snarky voice, you see, to maintain the kind of Rivers of London tone. So I thought it would be quite nice to see if I could do something. I'm always doing this though. Andrew complains, he goes, "You're always doing this, you always set yourself some terrible like high bar," and then you complain about it, go, "Oh, I've got to get over this high bar." You're the only person with that bar there. You could have just made life easier for yourself, but no. A story told entirely backwards or something, it's like
I think on that note of setting an impossibly high bar for yourself, that's a good point for us to say farewell on this conversation, which has been a celebration of 10 glorious years of Rivers of London.
10 glorious years.
Congratulations, mate, because I know it's something that we at Titan are very proud to be involved with, as your partner on the comics side. Everybody loves publishing the Rivers of London books. And for all the reasons you've been touching upon about aspects of these you've enjoyed putting the book together, that's what we always really enjoy when it's coming together inside the building.
Can I just say something nice about Titan?
Of course, yeah, please do.
I like the fact that it's Titan. It wasn't employed on their basis of their love of whatever it is they're doing, and so there's so it makes it slightly chaotic, but it also means that you will take risks that other people won't take risks on. Like go, "Oh, let's do a Rivers of London comic," and I go, okay, you went, let's do a Rivers of London comic, and that's quite rare these days that people will just do things because they think it's like a good idea. I mean, I know Titan is equally hard-headed when it comes to kind of long-term things, but it's like in the initial things, Titan will take risks that other people will not take on writers that other people will not take risks on.
So thanks, mate. On behalf of my friends and colleagues, I'd say thanks very much. And the thing about us is at Titan, because of course Forbidden Planet, to those who don't know, is part of the Titan Entertainment Group, and that's Titan Books and Titan Comics, Titan Merchandise. What we all are, of course, everybody, whether it's the Forbidden Planet staff, one of whom is my daughter. If you go to the till in the London store, we're all believers, right? We're all massive. We are, but to walk through the door before you do anything else, you're a massive fan, and everybody wants to do stuff that they really want to see support. Authors and artists that we love. So it's a real passion play from us.
Well, it also helps that Nick and Viv are still passionate about kind of making stuff.
Oh, well, no, and they are. That's absolutely right. There's no bigger fans than Titan's owners, Vivian Chung and Nick Landor. I mean, they're super fans.
And so I think a lot of it comes down from that. I think a lot of it trickles down from the top. It's like because they will take risks, and so therefore everyone down them knows that they're allowed to take risks. At least once, anyway.
No, it's true. I was in a meeting last night with Nick, and this was a sort of hard finance meeting, and we took a 20-minute detour to talk about some classic World War II Marvel comics from like 1974. That was 20 minutes of the meeting. That happens all the time, because I've done a bunch of media jobs over the last 30 years, but Titan's the only place where even at that level, in those kind of circumstances, people will digress and just celebrate what they truly love. And I think often in the world of corporate media, corporate publishing, people get very divorced from that.
Well, I've always wanted to do Achtung Nightingale as a commando comic. Yes,
absolutely, man. That's a fucking brilliant idea. There's one very enthusiastic purchaser/reader right here. Yeah, I'm all over that. Now it's my mission to.
I just haven't found a way of shoehorning it into a story yet. Sooner or later, I will find a way, and you will open the script, and it will go. Now we are in the world of Commando comics.
That would be awesome.
And we'll do the 2-panel thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we could either, I mean, obviously, the great art, the great artists you work with can turn their hands to anything in terms of mimicking that style, or you could actually get one of the Commando guys to do it.
Yeah, well,
they're still out there working.
I mean, my friend James was actually writing Commando comics, so it's like, it's like, wait. He said, I'm writing Commando comics. Like, oh my God, I grew up on Commando comics.
Yeah, me too. They're glorious. We could do a whole entire half hour talking about Commando comics. But in fact, we have done more than half an hour talking about the 10th anniversary of Rivers of London, which is, it's so great to be involved with, and it's so great just to watch the work that you do on the books and on the comics. And I'm really not surprised by this epic fan base that you've built over the last 10 years. Yeah, it's true.
I try not to take them for granted because, like, it's money. They got to hand over money.
Yeah.
Terrible.
But I love the way you're so interactive with them. On your Twitter presence, for example, one of the things that you do that has always intrigued me is that the things where you're posting how many words you've written in any given day on not very productive days. I always find that fascinating.
Yeah, well, I thought if you're going to do it, you got to be honest.
Yeah.
You can't only post on those days. I'm being very productive at the moment, but I expect a dry spell to come up any minute now because you go, I'm doing really well. So,
but that honesty is real. It's like the opposite of the Facebook effect, where people only post the highlights of their lives rather than the miserable searches within themselves.
I only ever really post it. I don't post much personal stuff, you see. So I'm always desperate for content.
Well, I am glad that you're desperate for content. At Forbidden Planet, we all are as well. All 10 years of Rivers of London, whether it's books, whether it's comics, is available from the links attached to this conversation.
From the available links.
The available links. Buy them now.
Money. He's bought a house. He needs money.
He does indeed. And Ben, thanks very much for joining me, mate. It's always great chatting with you.
It's always lovely to chat to you, and I will see you soon.
I'll see you sooner rather than later. Take care of yourself,
because
mate.
we'll all be seeing each other in the flesh soon.
We will, and that will be a glorious and beautiful day.
We are definitely going out for lunch because I'm owed about 3 years worth of lunches to myself and to other people, and I feel there's quite a lot of meals I haven't eaten for the last 3 years. So
eating meals is one of my favourite things. So you're 100% on, mate.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Let's get it done. Take care, and I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye-bye.
If you're enjoying watching Forbidden Planet TV and you're enjoying watching us talk to the world's most interesting and accomplished filmmakers, authors, artists, musicians, creators, subscribe right here. See you soon.